I'm not even supposed to be here today." Dante Hicks' words from the movie Clerks echoed in my head all throughout that night. It was just like any ordinary day, but I was supposed to have the night off. My boss, Randy, had called me to see if I could work a single job for him. I reluctantly agreed simply because it would be overtime. I was working at Randy's limousine rentals, and that night was the worst night of my life. The company had seen better days. Randy was flirting with bankruptcy, but he always managed to avoid it. I was just a driver, a chauffeur for those that like technical terms. The pay was decent, and he usually gave me free rein. He kept me around because anytime I would drive for people, they would always leave 5-star reviews. I knew the city intimately and could get people to and from any place they desired. I was loyal to Randy because my late wife was his sister. We both had no close family, and I had grown to think of him like a brother. He was basically family, the only family I had. The sun was beginning to hang low in the sky as I meticulously polished the limo sitting in the parking lot. It was the shortest limousine we had in stock, but I always loved the way it handled. It had a slightly longer wheelbase than a regular sedan, but there was just enough room to make the experience memorable as well as personal. When I'm driving, I like the limo to be spotless. Any spare moment I had went to detailing all my rides. The purple and pink sunset reflected off the windshield as I inspected it for any spots or streaks I might have missed. As I wiped away the last noticeable one, a sedan pulled into the parking lot and came to a stop in front of the building. The car grabbed my attention, and I momentarily forgot about the windshield. I watched as the driver's door opened. A man in a two-piece suit stepped out and hurriedly made his way to the back door to open it. Another man stepped out and took a look around. He was wearing an elegant suit and had a pair of glasses perched atop his nose. Under the assumption that this would be Brian Wells, my clientele for the evening, I made my way over. The driver of the sedan looked frazzled, like his life was crumbling around him and there was nothing he could do about it. He was clearly intimidated by the man he drove for. As he continued to hold the door open for the other gentleman, I approached. With my arm outstretched, I introduced myself. "You must be Mr. Wells. I'm Tom, and I'll be your driver for this evening." Brian extended his hand out to meet mine, and we shook. I couldn't help but notice this man had a rather weak grip. "Why, yes, and you must be the Thomas Fields I have heard so much about. It's a pleasure to meet you. Could you please take care of my bags for me? I need to make sure they make it into our ride for the night." Brian turned back to his driver and motioned to the car. "Jared, if you could help Mr. Fields. I can't forget them like I did last time. After that, you are free for the night." Brian turned back to me smiling. "I'll leave the two of you to it. I have to finish some business inside with Randy before we can leave. Make sure that bag and briefcase make it in the trunk." Brian adjusted his tie and headed inside the building. Jared leaned inside the car and pulled the trunk release. He seemed happier now to be out of the presence of Mr. Wells. With the trunk open, I reached inside for the bags. Jared asked, "Do you need a hand? They aren't very heavy, probably just paperwork or something." Me, "I think I can manage. So, is there anything you can tell me about Brian? You seem a little put off by him." "He's just a hard-nosed businessman. He likes things the way he likes them, and if you don't agree, you better watch out. He's easy enough to navigate if you keep your head down and don't annoy him. On the bright side, if you impress him, there is a large tip in it for you. That's one of the sole perks in working for him." I chuckled softly and smiled. "I will keep that in mind. Thanks. Well, I better get these in the trunk. You enjoy the rest of your night, Jared." "No problem. And you do the same. It's been a long day and I hear a bed calling my name." With that, Jared walked to the front of the sedan and climbed inside, shutting the door behind him. With the bags in hand, I shut the trunk and gently tapped it twice, indicating he was free to leave. I made my way over to the limo, fumbling in my pocket for the key fob. I pressed the button that popped the trunk and placed the bags inside. I slammed it shut and turned back around. Jared was pulling out of the parking lot and making his way down the road. I continued watching as the brake lights slowly began to grow smaller and smaller in the distance. Night had fully set at this point, and there was an unusual chill in the air. The sky was clear now, and the full moon shone bright in the night sky. The slight wind pierced right through me, making me shiver slightly. I stood there for a moment, gazing out at the barren road. Feeling goosebumps rise on my flesh, I made my way inside just as Brian walked out. He made his way over to the car in a hurried fashion. I opened the door for him and made sure he got in safely. After closing the door, Randy poked his head out of the building. "Take good care, Mr. Wells, Tom. I assured him you are the best we have. Don't prove me wrong." "You got it, boss. It looks pretty dead on the roads anyway. Should be an easy night." I got into the driver's seat now, shivering more violently. My hands were almost frozen as I entered the address into the car's GPS system. The system relayed that there was hardly any traffic on the roads. Shivering, I turned on the heater. It was a cold night, colder than it should be at that time of year. I put the car in gear and slowly pulled out of the parking lot and onto the two-lane, one-way street that would take us downtown. It was a straight shot. "So what brought you in this evening? I'm assuming business and not pleasure." "A business party with some prospective clients. I could have taken the sedan and had Jared drive me, but appearances are everything in this business, and I thought the limo would be a nice touch. All potential clients want to see that you are doing well for yourself. When you stop to think about it, though, it really shouldn't matter, but I'm not above a little showing off." "Well, it's like you said, appearances are everything. They just want to be reassured they are making the right decision. It's all about confidence, especially in business. If you can provide them with that, it goes a long way." Brian scoffed. "Confidence. When you've been in this business as long as I have, you learn there is nothing you can be truly confident about. We are at the whims of the wider market." "Yes, sir. Would you like any music this evening?" Brian didn't reply. There goes my tip, I thought. I decided to remain silent for the rest of the drive. Brian would be out of my car in less than half an hour, and I could just mess around on my phone until I had to drive him home later. What's the worst that could happen? As I made my way downtown, the small houses and apartment complexes transformed into larger buildings. The traffic was non-existent, which was unusual. I noticed there was only one other car on the road ahead of us. The thing that caught my eye was the unusually large number of people that were on the streets right now. Usually there would be more cars on the road than people out at this time of night. I couldn't help but think that something was off, but I had no clue what it could be. Was there some type of event taking place tonight? I took my eyes off the road and glanced around the street on either side. There were so many people on the sidewalk. Why were there so many people? The closer I looked, the stranger it became. None of these people were walking or even moving at all. Every single one of them was standing still. They were all staring off into the distance as if they were looking at something only they could see. All of them carried the same blank, emotionless expression. As I drove along, the amount of people steadily grew. Brian squints as he looks out the window. "I've only been to this town a few times, but this seems very odd, doesn't it? What exactly is going on here?" I don't know. I've never seen anything quite like this before. Maybe there's some kind of late-night festival or parade that I'm unaware of." I glanced from one side of the road to the other. There were so many people out. What were they all doing? No one seemed to be staring at any one thing in particular. Everyone was staring off in a different direction. The word that came to my mind was zombies. Do you see anything out there? Anything they might be looking at? It looks like we might have the start of a zombie apocalypse on our hands. Brian took a look out his left window, and after a long moment he turned to his right. Brian seemed to be just as interested as me. "I can't see a damn thing out there, but this is unsettling. Are people always like this around here?" No, I can say without a doubt this has never happened before. Hell, I've never even seen this many people on the streets at this time of night. I mean, you always have to be on the lookout for transients and drug heads in these areas, but it's not normally like this. Brian looked dumbfounded. It was as if his brain was trying to process what was going on, but no rational explanation came to mind. He shook his head before he spoke again. Well, the sooner we get to the party, the better. I don't want to get stuck downtown if there is a riot or something. How much longer until we arrive? I took a quick glance at the GPS before replying. The screen distorted for a few seconds before flickering back to normal. We're about 15 minutes away. A few minutes, and a few blocks later, things took a turn for the worse. As I drove along, the people gradually made a shift in their mannerisms. Instead of staring out in different directions, they all began to turn their attention to us. It was almost as if I could feel the eyes directly on me as I drove. It felt like they were staring into my very soul. It was unsettling and sent a shiver down my spine. This just keeps getting more odd by the minute. Everyone is focused on us now. I can see that, at least before they were all fixated on something else. Now it's as if they've formed a type of hive mind. The light up ahead turned red and I brought the car to a stop. The car that had been ahead of us also caught the light, and we were stopped side by side. I was finally able to fully take in my surroundings. I looked around the intersection only to see more people standing around. They were all staring directly at us. It didn't matter where they stood. The collective gaze fell on us. What the hell are they all doing? I thought. Is this some kind of mass hysteria? I shook my head, trying to rid myself of the thought. I simply couldn't believe my eyes. The car next to us rolled down the passenger side window and shouted something. She wanted me to roll down my window as well. I obliged. As I rolled the window down, the cold infiltrated and sucked the heat out of the car in a matter of moments. I began to shiver again. She said, "I've never seen anything like this. Do you have any idea what's going on?" At this point, I'm assuming you know just about as much as I do. We've been seeing people like this ever since we left about 20 minutes ago. It's the damnedest thing. It only just started happening in the last hour. I'm on my way home from work, and at first I didn't really notice it. At one point, it just sort of caught my attention. And have you noticed how there's hardly any cars on the roads? At this point, I'm just hoping to get home safe before something happens. I'm starting to get creeped out. It's the start of the zombie apocalypse. Just be thankful they haven't attacked yet. The lady laughed half-heartedly as the light turned green. Oh God, thanks for that. That's exactly what I need to be imagining right now. Will you be safe out there? She gunned it down the road, clearly in a hurry to get home. I smiled as I rolled the window back up. I was shivering violently now. I cranked the heater as high as it would go and pressed on the gas. I continued down the street, but I started to be more cautious. Occasionally, I glanced around to everyone still staring at us. Geez, it's freezing out tonight. You're telling me? What a freak show tonight turned into. I'm almost tempted to tell you to turn around and just get us out of here. Your wish is my command, but we're less than 10 minutes away now. It's your call. Watch out! I saw it as soon as Brian shouted. A man had walked out into the road and I swerved to avoid him. Multiple people were now making their way onto the road. Up ahead, I saw a group of 4 people coming off the sidewalk. I sped up and made it past them before they could block us. I saw brake lights up ahead and realized the driver from the stoplight was having the same problems. The vast majority of people were still standing statically on the sidewalk, but there were some stragglers walking around in the middle of the road. Were they trying to block me? I thought. It was merely an odd occurrence at first, but now it had become dangerous. Regardless of how strangely everyone was acting, I wasn't trying to hit any of them. I just had no clue what was going on. My fear heightened as one young man started sprinting back and forth across the road. When I first saw these people, it was just a bit odd. Odd things are nothing new to me, though. I have dealt with them at various stages of my life. Usually when these things happen, it's just an odd coincidence or situation in passing. I try to wrap my head around it, and if I can't, the interaction becomes one that I scroll away. I usually bring up these oddities as a joke or story later. That was not the case this time. I was still in the middle of this horrible experience and I wasn't sure how it would end. What the hell is going on? Can you turn us around and get us out of here? Look for a side street or something to turn down. Fuck this and fuck the party. Get us out of here now. I heard Brian, but I didn't reply to him. I was too focused on driving around all these random people. I knew that as soon as I got the chance, I would find a way out. Weaving in between groups of people that were now pouring onto the streets, I spotted a small window in between two groups. If I could just make it in between them, I would have a straight shot at the side street to the left. I turned the car as far to the right as I could before cutting it hard to the left. By some miracle, I managed to split right between them as their outstretched hands swiped along the side of the car. The bottom of the car scraped as I hit a pothole at the intersection. This street was only marginally better, but at least here, there was no one in the road. Holy shit. Holy shit. What the... Nice driving, but we're not out of this yet. Slow down a little and turn on the radio. Let's see if there might be some kind of broadcast about what's going on, yeah? Yeah, give me a second. I'm shaking. I think I'm running on adrenaline right now. With a shaky hand, I reached for the radio and turned it on. I switched the station from FM to AM and turned the dial, hoping to find a broadcast. Any type of news station that could relay some information about what was happening. I finally found a station, but it was cutting in and out. For those of you just joining us, we are repeating the breaking story for this. We go any further, we kindly remind you to stay off the roads tonight and in your doors and windows. Local authorities have reported a rash of downtown area. It is recommended that be avoided if at all possible. We repeat, avoid the downtown area if you cause for this unusual behavior that has been seen tonight. The radio cut off and the car was filled with static. I kept turning the dial hoping for something else, anything else. I switched it back to FM to check those frequencies as well, but there was nothing. Shit. At least the roads look clear this way. Are you all right, Tom? Yeah, I'm all right. Still shaking, but I think that's the least of our problems right now. I'm just trying to get us out of here in one piece. I drove the car steadily down the street. Hordes of people were still on the sidewalk watching us as we passed by. I took the next left, hoping it would be clear enough for me to get us out of here. I sped up, hoping that the faster I went, the faster these people would thin out once again. I continued messing with the radio dial as I drove, but I had no success. I needed to know what was going on because none of it made any sense. At that moment, I couldn't help but think of the poor lady in the car. Had she gotten out all right? About 200 yards ahead, the sidewalks cleared as everyone stepped off the curb and stumbled into the road. The same happened behind us. These people were boxing us in. If I could just find another opening, I could maybe get around them. I glanced around frantically, but it was no use. There was no opening. We were completely surrounded. I had to stop the car. There was no way I could run them all over. Even if I tried, I might get the car stuck. I brought the car to a stop as people converged on all sides, closing the gap between us. Fuck! What do I do? What should I do, Brian? Brian looked out the car from all sides. He was hyperventilating now. There was no escape. I don't know. There's nothing we can do. We're completely surrounded. Lock the doors and windows. Can they even get inside? With this many people, if they want to get in, they will find a way. It will only be a matter of time. Fully surrounded now, the people began banging on the car from all sides. I could feel my heart drop into my stomach and I yelled, "What do you want from us?" The banging stopped. A lone person among the crowd spoke. "He has returned. Tonight he returns to purge those unworthy." I almost jumped out of my seat as there was a loud crash on top of the car. The ceiling dented in slightly and the back windows blew out shattering glass everywhere. Oh my God, what the hell is that? Before I had time to process what had happened, the ceiling was torn open with surprising ease. A large, scaly hand emerged from through the roof. Razor-like claws protruded from each finger as it felt around inside the car. The hand grabbed Brian around his neck and pulled him from the back seat. The jagged metal pieces that now protruded from the makeshift hole in the roof sliced Brian's arms and legs wide open on his ascension. Brian's blood-curdling screams and cries for help were the only thing that could be heard in the night. They filled the quiet streets around me, echoing off into the distance. "Help! Help me, Tom!" I couldn't move, I just sat there in utter shock. I thought that if I so much as moved, my fate would end the same way. My mouth fell open as I glanced out the hole in the car's roof. A humanoid creature loomed there. Its face was hidden in shadows despite the bright moonlight, and I couldn't make out any features. It held Brian in both hands, examining him closely as he screamed for his life. Blood dripped down Brian's legs and fell into the cab of the car, puddling there. The creature was twice as tall and twice as wide as any person I had ever seen before. It had thick, transparent wings upon its back that seemed to shimmer mysteriously. Its scales gleamed as it continued to examine Brian. Apparently satisfied with what it had found, it leapt from the car and into the sky. Its wings flapped wildly as it climbed higher and higher. Brian's screams filled the air until, eventually, they could be heard no more. The creature had captivated the people that were surrounding my car. With surprising motivation, they all began to flee. Chants of him filled the air. As it flew into the sky, they all began to follow after it, looking up as they went. Within a minute, I was completely alone in the middle of the road. I wept. The emotional toll was too much for me to bear. A few minutes passed before I put the car in gear once more. I didn't know where I was going, I just knew I had to get away.